Good morning, Year 8. Today's lesson is on food chains and food webs. Please get your pen and paper, write down the title, underline it, and underline your date as well. We've got 3 lesson objectives today. We're going to draw a food chain and a food web. We're going to predict what will happen to organisms in a web if the situation changes. And at the end, we're going to explain what bioaccumulation is. You've got keywords down the side there in the yellow box. Can you write those out? And then just to get your brain started, have a look at the pictures at the bottom. We've got a rabbit, some grass and a fox. And I just want you to think about, you don't need to write it down, who eats what. That will get us thinking about food chains. So what a food chain is how we show what animals eat in a habitat. We connect the plants and animals with arrows. And the direction that the arrows go is really, really important. Let's have a look at the example at the bottom here. We've got grass, rabbit, and fox. And what happens is that the grass gets eaten by the rabbit. So the energy of the grass goes into the rabbit. And that is always the way that your arrows must go. The energy of the grass is going into the rabbit, so that is the way the arrow is going. And then the rabbit is being eaten by the fox, so the arrow again is going into the fox. Here are some examples of 4 food chains. Can you identify which one is correct? Have a little think. If you said it was this one, the third one, you're absolutely correct. Don't be fooled by the one at the top. Even though the grass, rabbit and fox are in the right order, the arrows are not correct. So make sure your arrows go in the right way. Here is a bigger example. I would like you to choose at least 3 of the organisms from these pictures and put them into a correct food chain. Make sure you've got your arrows going the right way. After you've made that food chain, we know that there are particular names that we give organisms in a food chain. So what's always going to be at the start is a plant. Plants are called producers. The reason they're called producers is because they can produce their own food using sunlight. Only plants can do this. Anything that eats plants is called a herbivore. Anything that eats meat or eats other animals is a carnivore. And anything that eats both meat and plants is called an omnivore. They eat everything. So using that, I'd like you to label your food chain with the producer, the herbivore, and the carnivore. If there is an omnivore in your food chain, you can label that too. However, in real life, it's not as simple as one animal eats one type of plant or one animal eats one other type of animal. In reality, there are lots of different food chains all coming together, and when they combine, it's called a food web. So now you have a bit of a challenge. I'd like you to just look, you don't need to draw this out just yet, just look at the animals and the plants on this slide and think about which animals eat which other animals, there can be more than one, and which animals eat the plants, and there can be more than one there. Just have a little think about it, see if you can make any links. You should have come up with something like this. This is an example of a food web. As you can see, there are lots of different links here, not just one-to-one. I'd like you to draw out this food web in your book as an example.
Right, Year 8, we've gone out foraging and we have found loads of cool stuff. This is all just in the grounds at school, so I'd be really interested to see what you guys can find on your walks, because I bet you can find some amazing things. We've got loads of stuff here. We've got lots and lots of plants, loads of greenery here. We found some leaf litter, which is those kind of like dying and dead leaves that are like skeletons now, this leaf litter. We've got some lichen here on this twig, really, really cool. And we've got some animals as well. We've got snails, we've got woodlice, we've got, what else we got? We have got slug, some kind of earwig type thing there. Oh yeah, where's our slug? We've got, just a big mess of slug there. And remember, this is a bird. And we've also got, courtesy of Miss.
So I've just popped to India, came back and I found this in my hair.
Travelling, miss, in this climate.
No, to be honest, I've just got it out my classroom. This is a giant Indian stick insect. So still a baby, actually. This is going to grow a little bit bigger. This eats brambles, stinging nettles,
Don't give
things
it away,
like that.
miss. Don't give it away. We're going to put these in a food web. Right, that, guys, that's your clue, because we're going to be putting these in a food web. So, have a go. Obviously, you've got a lot to work with here. Oh, is off. We're going to go a little bit further than food chains now, because in reality, it's not just that one thing eats one thing only. I really hope you don't spend your life just eating cheeseburgers. You know, let's hope there's some variety in there, and living things like some variety as well. So,
Would you like to see the frog?
Oh, I would like to see the frog, miss, yeah. So your task is to put these things into a food web. What eats what? Can we focus on that? What eats what, and what is eaten by what? Remember the direction of your arrows, please. And put them in the right place. And
I'm just going to add this, miss. Another form plant.
No. Okay, Year 8, we are thinking about food chains in this lesson. Here in front of us, we have got a snail that we found outside. We've got a leaf, and in the absence of actually bringing a bird into the science lab, we've got a feather, so we're going to pretend that that is our bird. First of all, I'd like you to think about, where does the energy come from in this food chain? So which object is going to be eaten first? Which one is our producer? Put that at the start of your food chain, and then create the rest of your food chain. What eats what? Pause the video and see if you can put it into the right order now. Okay, so you should have paused the video. You should have a food chain in mind. If you identified that the leaf is going to be at the start of the food chain, you're absolutely right. That is because the leaf is what's known as a producer. Leaves and plants, green leaves, can, through a process, make their own food. What is that process called? Think about that to yourself just now. If you thought photosynthesis, you are absolutely right. Well done. So through photosynthesis, this leaf can make its own food using the energy from the sun. And the thing that is going to eat that leaf is this snail. That's going to be our next thing. Now, when you're drawing a food chain, it's really, really important to remember which way your arrows are going to go. And your arrows show the flow of energy through the food chain. So the energy is coming from the leaf, going into the snail. So that is the way that we want our energy going. And then our consumer here. So our snail is what's known as a primary consumer. It is consuming, it's eating the leaf. We then have a bird, which is our feather here today, and that is known as our secondary consumer because it is eating the primary consumer. So again, your arrow must go in the correct direction. The flow of energy through the food chain is going from the snail now into the bird. And that is your food chain. Now, my next question to you is, what's going to happen if there is some sort of disease that suddenly wipes out all of the snails? So the snails are no longer part of our food chain. What is going to happen to the population of these leaves, and what's going to happen to the population of these birds if there are no snails in this food chain? Pause the video, write down your answer in your book, and restart when you're ready. Okay, so you should have had a think about what's going to happen to the population of leaves and the population of birds if snails are no longer a part of this food chain. So without the snails to eat these leaves, the number of these leaves should increase. This is only in this particular food chain. Of course, in real life, there are going to be many more things eating these leaves, so the snails may not have a big impact. But just in this food chain where it's just snails eating the leaves, the number of these leaves are going to increase. The number of the birds, if they've got nothing to eat, the number of the birds is going to decrease. They've got no food, so the birds are sadly going to starve and die, and the numbers of the birds are going to go down. We've got something else we can add into our food web. What's this, miss?
This is a locust. It starts off life as a grasshopper, and then when they need to fly somewhere else because they've run out of food, they metamorphosize, a bit like a caterpillar, into a butterfly. They metamorphosize into a locust, so they have wings. You might have seen recently on the news there was a plague of locusts, not good, because they absolutely devastate crops. There's another little clue missed.
Right, somebody is coming out to say hello.
So this is Andrew, miss. This is a giant African land snail. Still a baby, so it's going to get quite a bit bigger than this.
Loving the name Andrew, miss.
Yeah.
Oh, a bit shy. Not quite.
Camera shy.
Yeah, a bit camera shy.
It'll come out properly in a minute.
Right, just while we wait for Andrew to show his face, who's this, miss?
This is Maud. This is a tropical Pac-Man frog. Doesn't do much, to be honest, but I'll give you a clue. It doesn't eat plants.
Nice clue there, miss. And this is back to Andrew. Andrew wanted to make sure that I got his very best side so that he could show off for you guys at home.
As you just saw in the video, we went out into the school grounds and we found loads of different species. We found plants, we found animals, and if you would like to do this at home, that would be brilliant. You can do it with any insects that make their way into your house, you could do it in your garden, or you could do it on your walk. I use this app, it's called Seek, and it is brilliant. It's absolutely free, and all you have to do is scan an organism and it will tell you what it is. This is an example of what it looks like when you get the app up. You can scan something and it might have a little bit of difficulty. What you want is for it to get all the way to species, but sometimes it just gets stuck. So it just identified this one as class, but when I tried it from a couple of different angles, then it said that its species was cherry laurel, and it was quite funny with our lovely Astra, because first it identified her as a horse, but then it got dog. So it's not foolproof, but it is really good. It's really fun. If you would like to do it, go outside, see what you can find. Miss Nixon and I would love to see all the different species that you can find, and points and maybe a prize for anyone that can find the most exotic or the most interesting species and send it to us. Well done so far, Year 8. We've got one more thing to think about today, which is something called bioaccumulation. So in this example, we are thinking about some fish, some seals, and one polar bear. We are going to think about what might happen to this food chain if insecticide is taken in by the fish. So let's say that we have had to spray some chemicals that are going to kill insects. And those fish have eaten those insects which have got a small amount of chemical in. What's going to happen is that each of those fish is going to have a small amount of the chemical in. But then a seal, for example, might have to eat 10 of those fish. So there's 10 times as much of that chemical in a seal. But a polar bear might have to eat 5 seals to survive. So that polar bear is then taking in 50 times as much of that chemical as was originally taken in by the fish. So your definition for bioaccumulation, and can you write this in your book please, is when toxins build up and affect the top of the food chain the most. You've reached the end of the lesson, Year 8. Very, very well done. Our lesson objective today, we have drawn a food chain and a food web. We've predicted what will happen to organisms in a web if the situation changes, and we've explained what bioaccumulation means. Now I'd like you to go to Show My Homework for a very short quiz, and if you'd like to do a little bit more, there is an online game for food chains. You can click the link in the video description to go to the game. Really well done.